Hello friends, I'm Abby and today I will be doing the end of year book tag. This book tag is short and sweet. It only has 6 questions and I've just kind of been putting off recording it, but I said today's the day. So let's talk about the end of the year. Question 1, are there any books that you started this year that you still need to finish? And I have one book that I started in September, I believe, maybe even August. And I've just been kind of slowly making my way through, but never have I really felt like it's the right time to finish it. And that book is Tears of Amber by Sofia Segoza, maybe? And this is the author who wrote The Murmur of Bees, which I've heard fantastic things about. And this is the most recent book by her. And I'm actually really enjoying it. Like, the writing is great, but it is a story all about World War II and these two different families who are going through World War II in Germany and in Poland, I believe, and kind of following these two kids right now as they grow up in the war, and I believe it's kind of what they end up doing with their lives. But I started it in August or September, and I just wasn't ready for a 500-page World War II magical realism historical fiction novel. So although I'm really enjoying it and I hope to finish it by the end of this year, that is the only book that I've started and just kind of put a hold on this year that I'm hoping to finish. Number 2, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? So I picked 2 books for this because one, I am partway through and I think it is the perfect autumnal transition book. And another one I haven't read yet, but I'm planning to read at the end of November this month and to transition me into December. So the book I'm in the middle of right now is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. And this is a BookTube favorite. People love this book. And this book is similar to The Secret History, which was my pick for last year's autumnal transition book, because it is kind of quintessential dark academia. But this book follows a group of theater students at this very elite university for Shakespearean and other super elitist groups. And this follows these students in the Shakespearean company at the school as they are kind of grappling with a decision that they made and kind of figuring out who is at fault for this death that happens. And it actually starts with Oliver, who is our main character in this book, and he has spent years in prison for this crime that supposedly he was a part of. And he's finally getting out of prison at the very beginning of this book, and the detective that arrested him was like, hey, you've never really given me this story. Now that you're getting out, do you want to tell me what actually happened? And so Oliver's kind of like, yeah, I'll tell you. And this follows him as he tells his story of what actually happened that year that they were seniors in this college. And it's really great. It's very autumnal. It takes place at the start of a school year and kind of transitions throughout the school year. So, of course, it starts in the end of summer, it transitions into fall, and I think it's the perfect autumnal transition because dark academia is perfect for that. The other book that I think would be perfect is Small Favors by Erin A. Craig, because this is a young adult horror book, but it is set in the time where fall is transitioning into winter. So I think that this would be perfect. And I believe it's all about this small village up in these mountains, and there are monsters in the forest. I'm very excited to get into this. I haven't started it yet, but I think I'm going to read this at the end of November. Question 3, is there a new release you're still waiting for? I'm still waiting for the release of Our Violent Ends, which is the sequel, the duology finale of These Violent Delights. And I really enjoyed These Violent Delights. I gave it 4 stars, and I would love to see how the story wraps up because it's a young adult historical fiction set in the 1920s in China, and it follows a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So it's really good, and I'm excited to see how it ends because it ends on a pretty massive cliffhanger. So I'm excited for the finale to the duology. Question 4, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? And I actually had to narrow down my list because there's more than 3. But I picked 3 just to kind of have something. The first one is The Winter Garden by Alexandra Bell, and this is a fantasy book all about this magical gardening competition where people have to create a magical garden and they're competing for one life-changing wish. So whoever wins this competition for the garden gets a life-changing wish. And I think that this will be perfect for winter time. I'd love to read it before the end of the year. Also, Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. House in the Cerulean Sea was one of my favorite books of last year and one of my favorite books of all time. So I really, really want to get to this one before the end of the year. And this is all about this man who dies. And when he dies, he's taken to this tea shop in kind of the afterlife in between. And he is just kind of, he gets the chance to sit and see what happens in this little like in-between moment to transition into the afterlife. And I think he falls in love with the tea owner. Hey.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm just hanging out. I have 2 more books to talk about. I'm not going to put you in it. There's no point. There's no reason. And then the third book that I want to finish before the end of the year is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. And this is a super hyped book. It's been out for a few years, I believe. And it's all about this man who can't leave this hotel. And it follows his life as he lives in this hotel and meets all the people. It's a pretty big book, and I'm excited to read it, but again, I just haven't been in the mood for like a historical fiction vibe, a more serious like literary fiction vibe, so I'm excited to finish this hopefully before the end of the year. Question 5. Is there a book you think could still shock you and become your favorite book of the year? And the answer is, of course. I think Under the Whispering Door that I just talked about could be that book. Or another book that I'm hoping to read before the end of the year is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. The Night Circus is one of my favorite books of all time, also written by this author. So, of course, I think that her second book could potentially shock me and become my favorite book of the year, if not one of my favorite books of all time. So this book follows Zach, and I think it's kind of like a plotless book, more like a magical world, exploring different portals and different things like that. But it follows Zach as he discovers this book in a library, and that book kind of takes him into all of these different fantasy worlds, like a pirate world set on the sea. I think there's like this magical library going on, just kind of all kinds of magical adventures. So I think this could definitely shock me and be one of my favorite books of all time. And the last question, have you already started making reading plans for 2022? And my answer to that is kind of. I am changing up how I read in 2022 because I read so many books in 2021 that I overwhelmed myself. So in 2022, my goal is to do more mood reading, slow down, enjoy my books, rather than plan out these massive TBRs that I force myself to finish. I just want to kind of take it easy. So I haven't really made any like concrete reading plans. Of course, I still plan to participate in like Winterween and Summerween, the Reading Rush if it comes back, all of these big readathons I still want to participate in. And I have a couple reading vlogs in mind that I have planned throughout this year and didn't get to that I still might get to next year. But for the most part, I'm just kind of winging it for 2022, and that's how I want it to be. So I'm not mad about it. That is going to be all for me today, friends. Please like, comment, subscribe, share this video with anyone you think would enjoy it, and I will see you next time. Bye, friends.